The massive Zephyrian warship moved through the dark void of space like a predator hunting for prey. Commander Veltar stood on the bridge, his 6 eyes scanning the star charts displayed on the holographic screens around him. The ship was called the Eternal Dominion, and it was one of the most feared vessels in the Galactic Empire's fleet. For 3,000 years, the Empire had ruled the galaxy with an iron fist. Every species they encountered either joined them willingly or was crushed. Beneath their superior technology and ruthless military might, Commander Veltar had personally overseen the conquest of 17 different worlds, and each victory had been swift and decisive. The bridge was filled with the soft hum of advanced machinery and the quiet chatter of his crew. Lieutenant Krizel, his communications officer, was monitoring the long-range sensors when something unusual appeared on his screen. Commander Krizel called out, his voice carrying a note of curiosity. "We have an unknown vessel approaching our patrol sector, Altaris." Attention immediately focused on the tactical display. A small blip appeared on the screen, moving at a steady pace toward their position. The ship appeared to be roughly the size of a patrol craft, nothing that would pose any threat to their massive dreadnought. "Analysis," Veltar commanded, his voice sharp and authoritative. The ship's computer began processing the data. Within moments, detailed information scrolled across the screens. The vessel was approximately 300 meters in length, much smaller than any warship the Empire had encountered. Its design was unfamiliar, with smooth curves and what appeared to be a simple metallic hull. "No match in our database, Commander," reported Science Officer Mexton. "The ship appears to be using unknown propulsion technology. No ion trails, no energy signatures we recognize." Veltar examined the readings with growing interest. In all his years of service, he had never encountered a species that wasn't already cataloged in the Empire's vast database. Every intelligent race in the galaxy had either been conquered or had submitted to Imperial rule long ago. "Distance?" he asked. "Approximately 50,000 kilometers in closing," Krazel replied. "At current speed, they will reach communication range in 12 minutes. Veltar considered his options. Standard Imperial protocol was clear when dealing with unknown vessels. First, attempt communication and demand immediate surrender. If the aliens refused, demonstrate Imperial superiority with a warning shot. If they still resisted, destroy them completely. "Open a channel to Fleet Command," Veltar ordered. "Inform Admiral Kexther that we have made contact with an unregistered species." Within minutes, Admiral Kexther's image appeared on the main view screen. The Admiral was an imposing figure, even by Zephyrian standards. His battle scars and decorated uniform spoke of countless victories against those foolish enough to oppose the Empire. "Report, Commander," the Admiral's voice rumbled through the bridge speakers. "We have detected an unknown vessel of primitive design," Veltar explained. "Initial scans suggest a small exploration craft, possibly from an undiscovered colony world." "Admiral?" Kexther's expression showed mild interest. "Size and armament?" 300 meters, no visible weapon systems. "The vessel appears to be completely defenseless." The Admiral smiled, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "Another species ready for enlightenment, it seems." "Follow standard protocol, Commander. Bring them into the fold, or send them to whatever gods they worship." The transmission ended, and Veltar turned his attention back to the approaching vessel. Standard protocol was something he had executed hundreds of times before. It was a simple process that rarely took more than a few minutes. "Communications? Are we in range?" he asked. "Yes, Commander. You can establish contact now. Open a channel, all frequencies." The bridge fell silent as Krazel worked his controls. A moment later, he nodded to indicate the channel was open. "Unknown vessel," Veltar spoke in the standard Imperial tone of absolute authority. "You have entered space claimed by the Galactic Empire. Identify yourselves immediately and prepare to be boarded." For several long moments, there was no response. Then, a clear voice came through the communication system. The voice was calm, measured, and spoke in perfect Imperial standard language. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human exploration vessel, New Horizon. We come in peace and request formal diplomatic contact with your government." Veltar frowned. The alien's response was not what he had expected. Most species, when first encountering the Empire's military might, responded with either immediate surrender or panicked attempts to flee. This human had shown neither fear nor submission. Human Veltar repeated the unfamiliar word. "You will lower any defensive systems and prepare to be taken into custody. Resistance will result in the destruction of your vessel." Again there was a pause before the human responded. "Captain Morrison here. I appreciate your position, but we decline your offer. We request a peaceful meeting to establish diplomatic relations between our species." The bridge crew exchanged glances. No one had ever simply declined an Imperial demand before. Veltar felt a mixture of surprise and annoyance at the alien's audacity. "You misunderstand your situation," Veltar said, his voice growing harder. "This is not a request. This is a command from the Galactic Empire. You will comply immediately." "I understand your position perfectly," came the calm reply. "However, we represent the Human Federation, and we do not recognize your authority over our vessels. We offer friendship and trade. We suggest you contact your leadership for proper diplomatic protocols." Veltar's 6 eyes narrowed with anger. The primitive alien was actually lecturing him about diplomacy. Such arrogance from an inferior species was intolerable. "Final warning," Veltar announced. "Submit to Imperial authority or face the consequences." The human's response was immediate and delivered in the same calm tone. "We cannot and will not surrender our vessel. Came here in peace. Captain Morrison out." It's a communication channel. Closed with a soft click, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. In 3,000 years of Imperial expansion, no species had ever simply refused to acknowledge Imperial authority. Even the most warlike races had at least attempted to negotiate or flee. Commander Lieutenant Krazel said quietly, "What are your orders?" Veltar stared at the tactical display showing the small human ship continuing its steady approach. Standard protocol was clear. The aliens had been given multiple opportunities to surrender and had refused each time. Now, it was time to demonstrate the price of defying the Empire. "Weapons," he commanded. "Prepare a warning shot. Target their engine section with minimum power. Show them what Imperial technology can do." Weapons Officer Grixina's claws danced over his control panel. "Particle beam charged and ready, Commander. Minimum power setting selected. Fire." A brilliant beam of energy lanced out from the Eternal Dominion's main weapon array. The beam struck the human ship's rear section with precise accuracy. On the tactical display, the crew watched for the expected result. The warning shot should have disabled the vessel's engines and left it drifting helplessly instead. Something impossible happened. The energy beam simply disappeared upon contact with the human ship's hull. There was no explosion, no visible damage, no effect whatsoever. The small vessel continued on its course as if nothing had occurred. "Impossible," breathed Science Officer Mexton. "Our sensors show the beam made direct contact, but there's no damage." Before anyone could respond, the communication channel opened again. Captain Morrison's voice filled the bridge, but this time there was something different in his tone. The politeness was still there, but underneath it was something that made Veltar's blood run cold. "That was a mistake," the human said quietly. "We offered you friendship. We offered you peace. You chose violence instead. That was your choice to make, but now you'll have to live with the consequences." The communication ended, and on the tactical display, something began to happen to the human ship that would change everything the Empire thought they knew about the galaxy. Commander Veltar watched in stunned silence as the human ship began to change. What had appeared to be a simple exploration vessel was transforming before his eyes, and nothing in his military experience had prepared him for what he was witnessing. A smooth hull of the New Horizon started to shift and expand. Hidden panels slid open along the vessel's sides, revealing weapon systems that gleamed with an unknown metal. The ship's length doubled, then tripled, as sections extended outward like a flower blooming in the darkness of space. "What in the name of the Empire is that thing doing?" Veltar demanded, his voice tight with disbelief. Science Officer Mexton frantically worked at his console, trying to make sense of the readings flooding his screens. Commander, the energy signatures are off the charts. The ship is somehow restructuring its entire molecular composition. This technology is beyond anything in our database. Lieutenant Crizel's voice cracked with nervousness as he reported from his station. So the vessel's mass is increasing exponentially. It's now showing as larger than our own ship, and it's still growing. On the bridge of the New Horizon, Captain Jake Morrison stood calmly at his command chair as his crew worked with practiced efficiency around him. The transformation of their ship was something they had trained for countless times, but this was the first time they had been forced to reveal their true capabilities to an alien species. "Lisa, what's our tactical situation?" Morrison asked his weapons officer. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park checked her displays with steady hands. "All weapon systems are coming online, Captain. Adaptive armor is at full strength. The Zephyrian vessel's attack patterns have been analyzed and logged. Their technology is approximately 800 years behind our current standards." Morrison nodded. He had hoped this first contact would go differently, but the Empire had made their choice. Now humanity would have to show them the consequences of that choice. "Bobby, how are our power levels?" he asked his chief engineer. Chief Engineer Bobby Chen smiled as he monitored the ship's systems. "All reactors are running perfectly, Captain. We're operating at 12% capacity and could maintain current operations for approximately 6 months without any strain on our systems." The transformation continued as the New Horizon revealed its true form. What the Zephyrians had mistaken for a primitive exploration craft was actually one of humanity's most advanced warships, disguised to appear harmless to any species that might encounter it. Commander Veltar felt something he had never experienced in his military career: fear. The human ship now dwarfed his own vessel, and sensors were detecting energy readings. That should have been impossible. Worse, the ship's hull seemed to be absorbing energy from the surrounding space itself. Commander Weapons Officer Grixena reported with barely controlled panic in his voice. "I'm reading weapon systems on that. A vessel that I don't understand. The power levels suggest they could destroy our entire fleet with a single shot." "That's impossible," Veltar snapped. "No species has technology that advanced. Run a full diagnostic on our sensors." "Sir, I've run 3 diagnostics. Are accurate. That ship is showing power output equivalent to a small star." "You're in the human ship?" Captain Morrison walked over to where his first officer, Sam Taylor, was coordinating with the tactical team. The bridge was a model of calm efficiency, with each crew member performing their duties with quiet professionalism. "Sam, open a channel to the Zephyrian vessel," Morrison ordered. "It's time we had a proper conversation." Communication system activated, and Morrison's voice carried across space to the Imperial ship. "Commander Veltar, this is Captain Morrison. I believe we need to discuss your situation." Veltar's hands trembled slightly as he responded. "What are you? What is that thing you're flying?" Morrison's voice remained calm and measured. "We are human beings, Commander. This is a human warship. We tried to introduce ourselves peacefully, but you chose to attack us instead. That was unfortunate. It's impossible," Veltar said. "Our records show no species with this level of technology." "Where did you come from?" "We've been here all along, Commander. We've been watching your empire for centuries. We've seen your conquests, your wars, your treatment of other species. We had hoped that eventually you would grow beyond your need for domination." The word sent a chill through every member of the Zephyrian crew. The idea that this powerful species had been observing them without their knowledge was terrifying. The New Horizon navigation officer, Danny Wright, looked up from his console. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple Imperial ships approaching our position. Long-range sensors show at least 50 vessels, including several dreadnoughts." Morrison nodded. "Expected the Empire doesn't like to be challenged."
"How long?"
"Until they arrive, approximately 2 hours at their current speed. That gives us time to finish our conversation with Commander Veltar." Morrison turned back to the communication system. "Commander, you should know that your reinforcements are on the way. 53 ships, including the battlecruiser Sword of Empire and the super dreadnought Galactic Pride." Veltar's blood went cold. How could the humans know about fleet movements that had been transmitted on encrypted Imperial channels? "You're monitoring our communications," he said. his voice barely above a whisper. "We monitor everything, Commander. Have to. When you're the only thing standing between the galaxy and a species that views conquest as entertainment, you learn." To stay informed, Dr. Amy Foster, the ship's science officer, approached Morrison with a datapad. "Captain, we've completed our analysis of their technology. Their weapons are based on particle acceleration principles that we mastered for centuries ago. Their shields operate on frequency modulation that we can counter with minimal effort." Morrison reviewed the data quickly. "Thank you, Amy. How long to develop countermeasures for their entire fleet?" "You already have them, sir. Standard protocols include countermeasures for all known Imperial technology, can disable their weapons. Systems at will." Commander Veltar heard every word through the open communication channel. The casual way the humans discussed neutralizing Imperial technology was more frightening than any threat they could have made. "What do you want from us?" Veltar asked. Morrison considered the question carefully before responding. "We want what we've always wanted, Commander. Peace. Unfortunately, your empire seems incapable of understanding that concept. You see other species as either subjects or enemies. You don't understand the possibility of equals. The empire has brought order to the galaxy," Veltar said, though his voice lacked conviction. "The empire has brought fear to the galaxy," Morrison corrected. "There's a difference. You rule through terror and superior firepower. But what happens when you encounter a species with superior firepower of their own?" The question hung in the air like a death sentence. On his bridge, Veltar looked around at his crew. These were seasoned veterans who had served in dozens of campaigns, but now they looked like frightened children. "Sir," Lieutenant Krazel said quietly, "Admiral Kexther is requesting a status report." Veltar straightened his uniform and tried to compose himself. "Open a channel to the Admiral." Admiral Kexther's image appeared on the main screen, his expression showing confidence and anticipation. "Commander, I trust you've dealt with the primitive aliens by now." Veltar struggled to find words that could adequately describe their situation. "Admiral, we have encountered a problem." "What kind of problem? Did their ship malfunction when you fired on it?" "No, sir. The ship absorbed our weapons fire and then transformed into something larger than our own vessel. The aliens claim to have been monitoring the Empire for centuries." Admiral Kexther's expression slowly changed from confidence to confusion to anger. "That's impossible. Run a full sensor sweep and send me the data immediately." Within minutes, the tactical information was transmitted to the Admiral's flagship. The silence that followed was deafening. When Admiral Kexther finally spoke, his voice was barely controlled. "Commander, you will maintain position and wait for the fleet to arrive. Do not engage the enemy vessel under any circumstances." "Understood." "Sir," the communication ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Commander Veltar looked at the tactical display showing the massive human warship hanging in space nearby. For the first time in his career, he was facing an enemy that the Empire could not simply crush with superior numbers or technology. "Captain." Morrison's voice came through the speakers one final time. "Commander, you should prepare your crew for what's coming. Your admiral is bringing everything he has to this fight. We're going to show him why that was a mistake." Admiral Kexther stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Galactic Pride, watching as his massive fleet approached the coordinates where Commander Veltar waited. 3 full battle groups had answered his call for reinforcements. 212 ships of the line, including 15 super dreadnoughts and 40 battle cruisers. It was enough firepower to reduce an entire star system to dust. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "we have visual contact with the unknown vessel." The main view screen flickered to life, showing the human ship hanging in space next to the Eternal Dominion. Even from this distance, it was clear that the alien vessel was enormous. Its sleek design and strange energy patterns made it look like nothing in the Imperial database. "Impossible," Admiral Kexther muttered. "How did a single ship grow to that size?" His science advisor, Dr. Zexara, studied the readings with growing concern. "Admiral, the energy signatures are unlike anything we've encountered. The vessel appears to be drawing power directly from subspace itself. Our models suggest it has enough energy to engage our entire fleet. 1 ship against 200, Admiral Kexler's laugh was harsh and bitter. No matter how advanced their technology, they cannot possibly stand against the combined might of the Imperial Navy. On the New Horizon, Captain Morrison watched the approaching fleet with calm interest. His crew worked at their stations with the same quiet efficiency they had shown throughout the encounter. There was no panic, no desperate preparation for battle. They had trained for this scenario many times. "Danny, give me a tactical assessment," Morrison requested from his navigation officer. Danny Wright consulted his displays. 212 Imperial vessels, sir. Standard formation. They're approaching in 3 waves, probably planning to overwhelm us with concentrated firepower. Kate, weapons status? Morrison asked his weapons officer. Kate Rodriguez checked her console with practiced ease. "All systems green, Captain. We have target locks on every ship in their fleet. Defensive systems are at full readiness." Morrison nodded and turned to his communications officer. "Nick, open a channel to the Imperial fleet. All ships, all frequencies." Adams worked his controls. "Channel open, sir. You're broadcasting to the entire fleet." Morrison's voice carried across space to every ship in Admiral Kexler's armada. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel New Horizon. Admiral Kexler, you have brought an impressive fleet to our meeting. I assume you're here to demonstrate Imperial power?" Admiral Kexler's response was immediate and filled with arrogance. "Human, you will surrender immediately. You are outnumbered 200 to 1. Your destruction is certain if you continue to resist Imperial authority." "I appreciate your confidence, Admiral," Morrison replied calmly. "However, I think you misunderstand the situation. You're not here to demonstrate your power. You're here to learn about ours." The Admiral's face twisted with rage at the human's casual dismissal of his threats. "All ships, attack formation. Target the alien vessel and prepare to fire on my command." Imperial fleet moved into position with practiced precision. Hundreds of weapon systems powered up, creating an energy signature that would have terrified any known species. The combined firepower was enough to crack a planet's crust. On the New Horizon, Chief Medical Officer Ryan Lee monitored his crew's vital signs as they prepared for combat. What he saw confirmed what humanity had always known about themselves. Their heart rates were steady, their breathing calm, their stress levels minimal. Humans were uniquely suited for this kind of warfare. Sam Morrison said to his first officer, "Initiate Defensive Protocol 7. Sam Taylor nodded and activated the ship's most advanced defensive systems. Around the New Horizon, space itself began to shimmer and bend. The ship seemed to exist in multiple locations at once, making it impossible for targeting systems to lock onto it. Admiral Kexler watched in confusion as his fleet's weapons systems struggled to maintain target locks. "What's happening to our targeting computers?" "Unknown, sir," his tactical officer replied with growing panic. "The alien ship appears to be shifting between dimensions. Our weapons can't get a solid lock. Fire anyway. All ships. Full spread. Saturate the target area." 200 Imperial warships opened fire simultaneously. The space around the New Horizon erupted in a storm of energy beams, plasma bolts, and antimatter missiles. Assault lit up the darkness like a newborn star. For several seconds, the area was completely obscured by the massive explosion. When the energy dissipated and the sensors cleared, Admiral Kexler expected to see nothing but empty space and debris. Instead, the human ship hung exactly where it had been before, completely undamaged. Not a single scorch mark marred its hull. It was as if the devastating attack had never happened. "Impossible," Admiral Kexler whispered. "Nothing could survive that barrage." Captain Morrison's voice came through the communication system again. "Still perfectly calm?" "That was impressive, Admiral. Our sensors recorded the energy output of your attack, approximately 12.7 terawatts of directed energy. Very impressive for technology of your era. Technology of our era," the Admiral sputtered. "We represent the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. We represent the most advanced civilization you know about," Morrison corrected gently. "There's a difference. Would you like us to demonstrate?" Before Admiral Kexler could respond, the human ship began its counterattack. But it wasn't an attack in any sense that the Imperial forces understood. Instead of returning fire, the new Horizon did something that defied every law of physics the Empire knew. Engineer Carol Davis worked at her console, implementing systems that humanity had developed over centuries of hidden observation. Captain, we're accessing their communication networks now. Full spectrum penetration in 3 seconds. Proceed, Morrison ordered. Suddenly, every screen on every Imperial ship displayed the same image. Captain Morrison appeared on bridges throughout the fleet, speaking directly to each crew simultaneously. Officers and crew of the Galactic Empire, Morrison began, his voice reaching thousands of beings across hundreds of ships. I am Captain Jake Morrison, representing humanity. We have watched your empire for over 500 years. We have studied your technology, your tactics, your history. Admiral Kexter frantically tried to cut the transmission, but his communication officers reported that their systems were completely under alien control. Morrison continued his address. We remained hidden because we hoped your species would eventually evolve beyond your need for conquest. We watched as you enslaved entire civilizations. We recorded your crimes against peaceful species. We documented your cruelties. Throughout the Imperial fleet, crew members listened with growing horror as Morrison spoke. The idea that an unknown species had been watching them for centuries was terrifying beyond imagination. We could have revealed ourselves at any time, Morrison said. We could have stopped your expansion, freed your slaves, ended your wars. But we believed in giving you the chance to grow, to become better than you were. Morrison paused, letting his words sink in. You have disappointed us. That transmission. Admiral Kexter screamed at his communications officer. Can't, sir. They've taken complete control of our systems. Morrison's image looked directly at Admiral Kexter, as if he could see him. Admiral, you're wondering how we've taken control of your ship's systems. The answer is simple. We've been inside your networks for centuries. Every Imperial ship, every space station, every planetary defense grid, we know everything. The Admiral felt his world collapsing around him. Vasallo. Humans had access to all Imperial systems, then the Empire was completely vulnerable. Now, Morrison said, his voice taking on a harder edge, we're going to show you what happens when humanity decides it's seen enough. On the New Horizon, Weapons Officer Kate Rodriguez prepared to demonstrate why humanity had remained the galaxy's secret guardians for so long. Her finger hovered over controls that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. All weapon systems ready, Captain, she reported. Morrison looked out at the Imperial fleet one last time. Fire. What happened next was unlike anything the Imperial fleet had ever witnessed. Instead of the devastating energy beams or explosive missiles they expected, the human ship did something far more terrifying. It simply turned off their weapons. Every gun on every Imperial ship went silent at exactly the same moment. 212 warships, armed with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, came completely defenseless in the span of a single heartbeat. Admiral Kexter stared at his tactical display in horror as weapon after weapon showed red status lights. What's happening to our systems? His weapons officer frantically worked at his console, trying to restore power to their guns. Sir, all weapon systems are offline, reading complete power failure across all weapon grids. It's like someone just switched them off. That's impossible, Admiral roared. Our weapons are hardened against electronic attacks. They have independent power systems. Throughout the fleet, the same scene was playing out on every bridge. Captains and crew members watched helplessly as their ships became floating targets. Emergency protocols failed. Backup systems refused to activate. Every attempt to restore weapons resulted in the same message appearing on their screens. By human mercy, you live. The message was written in perfect Imperial script and appeared simultaneously on every ship in the fleet.
Our base.
It stayed on the screens for exactly 10 seconds, then disappeared, leaving the weapon systems completely dark. On the New Horizon, Dr. Amy Foster monitored the results of their demonstration. Captain, all Imperial weapon systems are offline. Our crews are attempting manual restarts, but our lockout protocols are holding. Captain Morrison nodded with satisfaction. How long can we maintain the lockout? Indefinitely, sir? Replace their weapon control software with our own. They would need to completely rebuild every weapon system from scratch to regain functionality. Engineer Carol Davis looked up from her station with a slight smile. Captain, we're also monitoring their internal communications. The panic level across the fleet is off the charts. Several ships are requesting permission to retreat. Morrison walked to the center of his bridge, where a holographic display showed the positions of all Imperial ships. Each vessel was represented by a red dot, and every dot showed the same status: defenseless. Open a channel to Admiral Kexther, Morrison ordered. Private communication this time. The Admiral's face appeared on the main screen, and his expression showed a mixture of rage and fear that Morrison had seen many times before. It was the look of a bully who had finally encountered someone stronger. What have you done to my fleet? Admiral Kexther demanded. We've shown you what human technology can accomplish, Admiral, Morrison replied calmly. Your weapons are offline, but your ships are undamaged. Your crews are safe. We could have destroyed your entire fleet in the time it took to disable your guns, but we chose not to. This is impossible. No species has this level of technological advancement. Morrison's expression grew serious. Admiral, let me tell you about humanity. We've been traveling between stars for over 800 years. We've developed technology that your scientists wouldn't understand if they studied it for centuries. But more importantly, we've learned something that your empire never has. What's that? The Admiral asked, though his voice suggested he didn't really want to know. We've learned that true strength comes from knowing when not to use your power. On his ship, Communications Officer Nick Adams received an incoming transmission from NI. Across the galaxy, Captain, we're receiving messages from human colonies throughout Imperial space. They're ready to reveal themselves on your orders. Morrison considered this carefully. The plan had always been to remain hidden until the right moment. That moment had clearly arrived. Send the signal, Morrison ordered. All colonies, all outposts, all observers. It's time. What happened next would be remembered as the most shocking moment in galactic history. Across the Empire, on hundreds of worlds that had been under Imperial control for generations, humans began to reveal themselves. They emerged from positions as merchants, traders, scholars, and workers. They had been living among the conquered species for decades, sometimes centuries, gathering information and quietly protecting innocent beings from the worst of Imperial oppression. On the Imperial capital world, the human ambassador, who had been masquerading as a trade representative for 40 years, walked calmly into the Emperor's throne room and requested an immediate audience. On the mining world of Cathara, human engineers who had been secretly improving working conditions for slave laborers revealed that they had been documenting Imperial crimes for prosecution. On the military shipyard at Vexton Prime, human technicians who had been sabotaging the construction of planet-killer weapons for decades stepped forward to explain why so many Imperial superweapons had mysteriously malfunctioned during testing. The reports flooded into Admiral Kexther's fleet within minutes. Humanity hadn't just been watching the Empire. They had been everywhere, working from within to limit the damage the Empire could cause while they waited for the right moment to act. How many of you are there? Admiral Kexther asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Captain Morrison consulted his tactical display. In your empire, approximately 50,000 human agents spread across 800 worlds. Throughout the galaxy, several billion. The number hit Admiral Kexther like a physical blow. Billions. We've been colonizing space longer than Your empire has existed, Admiral. We have settlements and star systems your people haven't even discovered yet. We've made contact with hundreds of species that you've never encountered. Morrison's tone became more serious. And all of them know. About the Galactic Empire? They know about your conquests, your slave worlds, your planet-killer weapons. They've been asking us for years why we don't stop you. And what did you tell them? We told them that every species deserves the chance to grow beyond their primitive nature. We hoped that eventually, your people would realize that conquest and domination aren't the path to true civilization. Morrison paused, looking directly at the Admiral. We were wrong. Dr. Amy Foster approached Morrison with a datapad. Captain, we've completed our analysis of Imperial military capabilities. With their weapon systems offline, they have no way to threaten any of our installations or allies. Thank you, Amy. What about their defensive capabilities? Minimal. Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons and physical projectiles. They have no defense against our quantum manipulation technology. Morrison turned back to the communication screen. Admiral, I'm going to make this very simple for you. Your empire is finished, not because we're going to destroy it, but because we're going to do something much worse. We're going to ignore it. What do you mean? Every species you've conquered is about to learn that humanity has been protecting them from the worst of your oppression. Every slave world is about to discover that their liberation has been planned for decades. Every conquered people is about to realize that they have powerful allies. Morrison's voice grew colder. Your empire ruled through fear and superior technology. What happens when your subjects learn that there's a species with technology so advanced that they can turn off your weapons with a thought? Admiral Kexler felt the blood drain from his face as he realized the implications. They'll rebel.
Oh.
They'll be free, Morrison corrected. And humanity will ensure they stay that way. The Admiral looked around his bridge at his crew. These were veteran officers who had served the Empire faithfully for decades. Now they sat at useless control stations, surrounded by weapons that wouldn't fire and shields that couldn't protect them. What do you want from us? Admiral Kexler asked. Captain Morrison considered the question carefully. The next few minutes would determine the fate of trillions of beings across the galaxy. We want what we've always wanted, Admiral. Peace. But not the peace of conquest and submission. Real peace. The peace that comes when civilized beings choose to work together instead of trying to dominate each other. Morrison leaned forward. In his command chair, the question is whether your empire is capable of learning that lesson or if it needs to be taught. The silence that followed Captain Morrison's words stretched across space like a vast ocean. Admiral Kexler stared at the human on his screen. Knowing that everything he had believed about the galaxy had just been shattered, his empire, which had dominated for 3,000 years, was suddenly revealed to be nothing more than a local power that had been allowed to exist. You said you want to teach us, Admiral, Kexler said finally. What kind of lesson did you have in mind? Morrison stood and walked to the front of his bridge, where the tactical display showed the positions of every ship in the Imperial fleet. 200 vessels, all helpless, all waiting to learn their fate. The lesson is simple, Admiral. You're going to learn what it means to serve instead of rule. Before the Admiral could respond, Morrison continued. Your empire will release every slave world. Every conquered species will be given the choice to remain part of your government or declare independence. Every prison camp will be opened. Every forced labor facility will be shut down. That's impossible, Admiral Kexler protested. Empire depends on those resources. Our economy would collapse. Then you'll learn to build an economy that doesn't depend on the suffering of others. Morrison replied without sympathy. Humanity managed it, so can you. On worlds throughout the Empire, the process had already begun. Human agents who had been hidden for decades stepped forward to coordinate with local resistance movements. Liberation fleets appeared in star systems. Where Imperial forces had never seen them before, the planet Zorith Prime, which had been strip-mined by slave labor for 2 centuries, watched in amazement as human ships arrived to begin environmental restoration. The slaves who had worked in the mines discovered that their human overseers had actually been documenting Imperial crimes and protecting workers from the worst abuses. On the agricultural world of Mestos, where entire populations had been forced to grow food for Imperial worlds. Human agricultural specialists revealed that they had been secretly developing farming techniques that would allow the planet to feed itself while ending the forced labor system. Dr. Amy Foster handed Morrison a communication device.
Captain?
We're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Central Command. Morrison activated the device, and the voice of Admiral Patricia Hayes filled the bridge. Jake, good work out there. The Council has been monitoring your situation. How are things proceeding? The Imperial fleet is neutralized, Admiral Morrison reported. We're beginning the transition process. What's the status on the other fronts? All human agents throughout Imperial space have revealed themselves as ordered. Resistance movements on 400 worlds are receiving our support. The Emperor has been contacted directly and is requesting immediate negotiations. Morrison smiled. The plan they had developed over centuries was working perfectly. What are his terms? He doesn't have any. He's asking for ours. Admiral Kexter listened to this conversation with growing horror. The humans weren't just powerful. They were organized on a scale that dwarfed anything the Empire had ever attempted. They had been planning this moment for generations. Admiral Morrison said, turning back to the communication screen, "You're going to return to your capital immediately. You're going to tell your Emperor exactly what happened here. You're going to explain that humanity is not interested in ruling the galaxy, but we will not allow the Empire to continue as it has. And if we refuse," Morrison's expression didn't change, but his voice carried a weight that made Admiral Kexter's blood run cold. "Then we'll find leaders who will cooperate. The choice is yours." Communications Officer Nick Adams looked up from his station. "Captain, we're receiving surrender requests from 37 Imperial ships. They're asking for permission to join human forces." Morrison considered this development. It wasn't unexpected. Many Imperial officers had joined the military for honorable reasons and had grown disgusted with the Empire's methods over the years. "Grant their requests," Morrison decided. "Have them dock with our support vessels for debriefing and reassignment." Sam Taylor, Morrison's first officer, approached with a concerned expression. "Captain, what about the rest of the fleet?" "They'll return to Imperial space with a message," Morrison replied. "And with a few modifications to their ships." Engineer Carol Davis smiled as she worked at her console. "Already on it, Captain. We're installing monitoring systems on every Imperial vessel. If they try to attack civilian populations or human installations, their ships will shut down automatically." "How long will the modifications take?" "They're already complete, sir. We've been uploading the software during our conversation." Admiral Kexter felt another wave of despair wash over him. The humans hadn't just defeated his fleet. They had turned his ships into remote-controlled vehicles that would only function as long as they behaved according to human standards. Morrison opened a channel that broadcast to every ship in the Imperial fleet. "Officers and crew of the Galactic Empire, this is Captain Morrison. You are free to return to your homes. Your weapons will remain offline, but your ships will function normally as long as you commit no acts of aggression against civilian populations." He paused to let this information sink in. "However, you should know that the galaxy has changed. Humanity is no longer hiding. We will be watching, we'll be protecting the innocent, and will respond to any attempt to return to the old ways of conquest and oppression." Chief Medical Officer Ryan Lee monitored the stress levels of the UTEHE Imperial crews through their own ship sensors. The readings showed a mixture of relief and terror. Relief that they weren't going to be destroyed, and terror at the realization that their entire way of life was ending. Furthermore, Morrison continued, "Any Imperial officer or crew member who wishes to help build a better galaxy is welcome to join us. We don't judge people by their past mistakes. We judge them by their willingness to do better." The response was immediate. Dozens of Imperial ships began requesting permission to defect. These were people who had grown tired of serving an empire. Built on cruelty and oppression, Morrison turned to his tactical officer. "Kate, prepare our escort formation. We're going to accompany Admiral Kexler back to the Imperial capital." "All ships ready, Captain," Kate Rodriguez reported. "The New Horizon and 12 support vessels will escort the Imperial fleet home." Admiral Kexler realized that he was going to have to face his emperor and explain how the most powerful fleet in Imperial history had been defeated without firing a single effective shot. Worse, he would have to explain that humanity had been manipulating Imperial affairs for centuries. "Captain Morrison," the Admiral said, his voice heavy with defeat. "What happens to people like me? People who spent their lives serving the Empire?" Morrison's expression softened slightly. "That depends on what you choose to do now, Admiral. The galaxy doesn't need more conquerors, but it always has room for people willing to protect the innocent." The journey back to the Imperial capital took 3 days. During that time, Morrison received constant updates from human agents throughout the galaxy. The liberation was proceeding smoothly. Slave worlds were declaring independence. Resistance movements were overthrowing Imperial governors. The empire that had ruled for 3 millennia was dissolving peacefully. On the final approach to the capital world, Admiral Kexler made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. "Captain Morrison," he said over the communication channel, "I would like to request asylum with human forces." Morrison raised an eyebrow. "That's unexpected, Admiral. Why?" "Because I've spent 40 years serving an empire that I thought brought order to the galaxy. Now I know it brought only suffering. I want a chance to make amends." Morrison considered the request carefully. "You understand that you'll face trial for war crimes committed under Imperial orders?" "I understand. But I also understand that humanity offers something the Empire never did, the chance for redemption." Morrison nodded. "Slowly, request granted, Admiral. Welcome to the new galaxy." As the human fleet entered orbit around the Imperial capital, Morrison looked out at the planet below. Soon the Emperor would sign the surrender documents that would officially end the age of Imperial domination. It's the age of humanity's guardianship of the galaxy had begun. But Morrison knew this was just the beginning. Building a peaceful galaxy would be much harder than conquering one. Fortunately, humanity had been preparing for this moment for centuries. They were ready.